Oh God. I feel like I haven't done a sit down video in a while and it shows. Okay, I hate it here. Hello my bookworms, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Sydney and today's video will be all of the books that I read in the month of May, otherwise known as my May wrap up. I cannot believe it's already May. June. It's June now. I cannot believe that it's already June. Where has the year gone? I don't even know if I have all the books next to me. I should really plan better than this. You'll come to find out that what I read this month was a lot of mood reads. I didn't really follow my TBR, hence why this month in June I had to take a punishment in my TBR game. But I enjoyed most of what I read, kind of. This month I did find like a couple new favorite books, like for sure, but then there also were some disappointing ones. So let's go. So in the month of May, I read 8 books while also finishing 2 books that rolled over from the previous month. And I don't know if I already talked about them here. Wow, I'm so unprepared. April wrap up. Okay, I don't think I talked about these. This is going really well. Okay, so really quick, I didn't even say welcome. Hi, thank you for being here. I appreciate you hanging out with me for a little bit. Oh God. 2 books that I started in January, February, March, April that I carried over and finished in the beginning of May. Yeah. Were Lore and the Bone, oh my God. Born season? Lore and the Bone season. I have these in a vlog that I talk about pretty extensively. It's the Molly Made Me Do It vlog, so I will leave that link down in the description if you want to check it out. But very quickly, Lore is basically a Greek myth retelling in a way set in like urban New York. I always have a hard time explaining this book. Basically, it involves Greek myths. It involves some sort of competition style game with death, and if you kill a god, then you take over their god powers and are then eternal. But we want to stop these games because it's no longer fun, apparently. But yeah, I read this and I actually loved it. I was really nervous about it. I didn't know how I was gonna feel about it. I got an ARC for it before it even came out, like in November of last year. I just like didn't read it. I don't know. The end of the year is always super crazy with my birthday, Caleb's birthday, my dad, my brother's birthdays, as well as Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. Like I just don't read much at the end of the year. So I didn't get around to it. But I did read it and I gave it like a 4.5 out of 5. It was really good. I liked it. And then the Bone season, again, don't remember if I talked about it already or not, aside from the vlog, but 5 out of 5. Bone season is absolutely incredible. I think that it is such a unique idea in that it focuses around clairvoyancy and how being a clairvoyant is illegal. So then there was an underworld created for the clairvoyants to avoid persecution, but our main character, her father, is also a leading person in the Scion regime, the government. And then this book, it just like got crazy. And the ending made me very excited to continue the series, so I need to make that happen. 5 out of 5. And then getting into, am I low? Am I like, is this fine? This is fine, right? I have a belly full of sushi and now I'm drinking coffee. Is that a good idea? Maybe not. Getting into the books that I read in June more so. What the fuck is happening right now? For the Buzzwordathon, I'm trying to participate throughout the year. So this past month's word was home or house. So I read Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. And it was okay. It was okay. Can't talk about why I didn't like it so much without spoiling some parts of it. So let me do this. What kind of ruined the book for me, non-spoilery, is Caleb and I actually listened to this book together. So on audiobook, there was 2 narrators, a man and a woman for the respective storylines, and the man's voice reminds me of Saul from Better Call Saul, if you know what that show is. And when he is doing a female voice, it is so obvious that he is a man that cannot do a female voice. I don't know, it's just very shrill and not great. So that part kind of like took us both out of it. The first time I heard him do a female voice, I was like, I didn't say anything because I was like, oh, maybe it'll get better. And then like a half hour into the book, I was like, dude, this is not great. And Caleb was like, yeah, no, it's really not. But obviously we put that aside and we still finished the book. It was good, but I wanted it to end differently. I'm gonna put a little thing right here, meaning spoilers. So when this thing whatever I have put in the screen right here is up. I'm talking about spoilers. So skip ahead if you don't want this book to be spoiled. And when it goes away, feel free to come on back. So what I really didn't like about this book was how at the end they didn't keep it as like a mysterious haunted house. They made a excuse or found a way to make sense of all of the noises in the house, or they tried to justify things. Whereas it would have been so much better, in my opinion, if they just left it a mystery. Like, yeah, this house is really fucking haunted and it's creepy, it's spooky, people die here all the time, and there's ghosts. But instead, they started to justify everything, and it kind of ruined it for me. I was like, no, let it be spooky. But they didn't let it be spooky the whole way. There's still like a shred of spookiness at the end, but not enough for me. I just think that it could have been summed up a little bit better. That's all. But it was intriguing, it was interesting, but I just think that it could have been finished in a better way, in my opinion. That's all. Do I matter? Not really. Which one do I want to talk about next? Okay, the next book that I read was Clara in the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. And this book is basically following an AI, but they call it an AF, so an artificial friend. And this friend is who we are seeing the story through. And basically there are parents who can buy these AFs for their kids for like for a friend, for a friendship. And we follow Clara, who is a AF. I really wanted to love this book, and I think that love is just too strong of a word for it. I did like this book though. I thought that it was super interesting in the way that it was written, especially in the sense of the point of view, since we are hearing from an AI, like an artificial friend perspective. The way that things are described are very, very cool in like a sci-fi fundamental way, because the way that this artificial friend takes in information and processes it is very much like what a computer/child would do. And just reading through the descriptions of Clara trying to learn her surroundings and figure out people and their emotions, it was very cool. I liked it. But the story itself, it just kind of dragged on a little bit. Not a whole bunch happened. I mean, like, things happened, but just in a way that didn't grip me as much as I would have wanted it to. But I definitely still enjoyed this book. I had a good time reading it, and I do think that it's a very special read. So for that reason, I gave it like a 3.5 out of 5 for my rating. The next book was for sure a mood read. And it was mostly because I finally got my hold for the audiobook on Libby, and then it was going to expire in 3 days if I didn't actually read the book. And the wait list, if I deferred my copy, would have been another like 10 weeks. So I picked it up, and I'm so happy that I did, because this book is for sure one of my favorite books of all time. And it's a romance. Who Am I? It's Beach Read by Emily Henry. I love this book so much. In this one, we're basically following Augustus Everett and January Andrews, and they're both authors. However, January writes happy endings with romance and women's literature, and then Augustus writes more literary fiction. And they're both having a writer's block and staying at neighboring beach houses, so they swap genres and agree to write a different story. And obviously romance happens, but it's also so messy. A lot of stuff happened. A lot of really deep conversations happened. When I tell you I sobbed, I mean I fucking sobbed. I was ugly crying. I'm gonna cry right now. I was ugly crying by the end of this book. Like full on, like couldn't breathe. I don't know if that's just me, but this book hit different for me in the best way. So I gave this a 5 out of 5. I just really connected with it, and I really, really loved the writing. Super easy to read and listen to, and the audiobook narrator was fantastic. So yeah, 5 out of 5. The next book I read was because of the same exact reason. I have deferred my hold on this book a couple times already, but it was the Asian Readathon last month, so I saw that this book, I had it again in my grasps on my Libby account, and I was like, it's not on my TBR. You know what? This was the book that sent it all over. I picked this book up as my first mood read of the month, and thus the month got away from me. But this book was going to expire on Libby, and I was like, well, I gotta read it. And it was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by, who was it by? By Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and it was good. This was another one that I was just like underwhelmed by. I do love this cover. I will always love this cover. I think it is the cutest thing ever. However, the book itself was just good. This is basically about a cafe that can put you back in time. You have to sit in this specific seat in order to be sent back in time, and you have to return to the present day before your coffee gets cold. And in it, we have 4 different kind of stories that involve this situation and going back in time. However, they're all kind of connected as well. And the first story, I was like, oh my God, I love this. Like, this is super cool, really well written, super interesting. And then it slowly just got kind of a little bit more repetitive and boring, only because each of the stories, it was almost like they were supposed to be little novellas, because in each of the stories, the author still went through all of the necessary requirements and the rules of sitting in the chair. And I was like, yeah, I know this. Like, by the end, I was like, I got it. Like, let's move on. So for that reason, like, I felt like it could have been written a little bit differently in order to keep my attention, like, totally. But ultimately, I felt like the idea was very interesting. I really liked the characters and the atmosphere that I was getting from the story, so I gave it a 3. The next book I read, also a mood read, and also because it was on Libby, and I had been waiting for it for about 2 months, and I finally got it, so I read it, and it was Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. This is another one that, like, I love it. I love it. I loved it. This is a book where we follow a family throughout the generations. And it talks about Japanese culture, it talks about Korean culture, and the difficulties that this family was having being Korean, living in a predominantly Japanese country, and the difficulties that they are going through. I was just 100% invested from the first chapter. And as the story went on, I felt so attached to this story and to these characters. And I talked about this a little bit in a previous vlog, but the writing in Pachinko is definitely one of my favorites that I have ever read. It's told from third person, but it is so fluid. So like, in sometimes when I'm reading third person, it feels kind of choppy going from character to character and what each character is thinking. But this book, like, any time that it kind of changed perspectives or changed characters that we were more so following, it felt like there was 3 sentences that like intermingled the 2 characters, and then it like bled into the new character. And it was just beautiful. It was beautiful. This book deserves no less than 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely. It's incredible. And if you like kind of like a slow burn, really character driven story that like takes time and you'll just be completely invested in their lives, this is definitely something that you would like. And I love those stories, so 5 out of 5. The next one I read was a little less successful. This one I read because I randomly decided to do a readathon in one of the weeks last month, I almost said year, for the Breath of the Wild-a-thon. It's hosted by Kaz and her friend Red, and it's like a Zelda Breath of the Wild themed readathon for a week. And one of the prompts was read a book that reminds you of wintry vibes, and I don't have many of those, but I did have Bear and the Nightingale, so I picked that up, and I wish I didn't. This book basically follows our main character Vasya, who is living in the Russian wilderness with her family and like the people of her kind of town, and it has a bunch of Russian folklore. Other than that, I couldn't give you a adequate synopsis of it because I just didn't care about it that much. I was really kind of bored with it. There was a few times in the book where it kept saying like something was going to happen, and then another character was like, no, not yet. And then the other character would be like, okay, fine, we'll wait 1 more year. And then it happened like 2 or 3 times, and I was just like, no, just let it happen. I just want this story to take off. I just want something to happen. And nothing kept happening. The writing was good. I mean, it wasn't my favorite ever, but it wasn't bad. But just like the story itself, I just didn't connect with. I didn't really care that much about the characters. The thing that I really thought was interesting was the Russian folklore aspects to it, learning about these different fairy tales and how they were actually like coming into real life in this story. I thought that was really cool, but other than that, I was just kind of ho-hum about it, you know? So it's between a 2 and a 3 for me, and I feel really bad about that. But like, I would say like a 2.5, honestly. I'm sorry. Okay, the next book that I read, we only got 2 more, is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. And this one is a Jomeo and Jomeo and Juliet. And this one is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but based in 1926 Shanghai. It is also involving two rival gangs. Romeo and Juliet in this story are on two opposite sides of the rival gangs in this city. And there's also like some weird contagion that's going on. It's very like mystical, kind of like dark, eerie, and deadly, basically. But I thought that it was good. The plot twists were pretty well placed. I'm like forgetting this book entirely. This book was also in my Breath of the Wild-a-thon reading vlog video, so I'll leave that down in the description too. I think that I wanted it to be a little bit more violent. I don't know. Ultimately, I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, and I think we'll leave it there. The next book that I read in the month of May was because I landed on a Caleb's pick in my Spin the Bottle game. So he picked Franny and Zooey for me to read by J.D. Salinger, and he had me read the first story in this 9 stories book before I jumped into this one. So I read the first story. It was only like 15, 18 pages. And then I read Franny and Zooey. Within like the first 20 pages of reading this book, I looked over at Caleb and I was like, this is how you talk. Like, I 100% see how this book like formed you or like means a lot to you. And he didn't know how to take that. But I thought that this book was actually really funny. It's very, very much a thought-provoking and just like character-driven story. It takes place over only like 3 days or so, and it's really just like about relationships and what you want to do with your life, and I don't know, it was really good. I didn't really have any expectations going into it. I genuinely had no idea what I was getting into. And this was my first time reading a J.D. Salinger book, and I have come to find out that he is very heavy on his descriptions. So there is like 2 whole pages, maybe that's dramatic, but at least 1 full page describing like what is in a character's medicine cabinet and like how it's arranged and like things like that. I was like, oh my god, okay, like let's move on. So like overly describing things was definitely something to note in this book. However, his dialogue between his characters was so good. It was absolutely hilarious, but also like sad at times and thought-provoking. But like overall, it was funny. It was good. I actually laughed out loud multiple times while reading this. And not just the, you know, like the nose thing. Like I actually laughed out loud. Mostly because one of our main characters, Zooey, is kind of a dick. And I just thought that he was really funny. But yeah, I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5, and I am really happy that I finally picked it up. And now Caleb can't threaten me anymore with not reading it. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me for a little bit. If you are still watching, then leave the sun emoji down below in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video. I always appreciate your support. And of course, be kind to one another and happy reading. Oh god, I need to learn how to breathe and smile at the same time. Okay, bye. Oh god, I can't reach.